Hey guys, welcome back. Sorry for the delay, so we'll just go ahead and jump right into this. Um, this is an old saw blade. It's about 3 feet long by about a foot wide when it's flat like that. The prongs have been removed from the handle. Um, and if you can't tell, it's, the obviously brighter colored rings that are on the handle itself. You can tell there's a lot of rust on the blade, and what I'm trying to do right now is actually record over all of the videos that I've had to make for this one particular video, mainly because I believe it's going to help cut down some of the rambling for this one. Plus, it'll just make everything a lot more coherent. Um, like I said, old saw blade, 3 feet long, 1 foot wide. Um, what I plan to do is I plan to turn this into a kind of cleaver by removing the back half of the handle section to turn it into an artificial tang, and then file down the teeth, put a beveled edge on it, hone and fine the edge, and then do rust work to remove it. So from there, I'm just going to go ahead and jump into a couple updates about it. Updates about why I've been a little slow. Most of it's been due to issues in life, and my schooling has been kind of interfering with it. On top of that, I've run into a lot of monetary issues. Not a lot of things that could have been helped when it comes to it. So right now I'm in the middle of trying to find a new way to keep the videos going and keep my standard of living going and all of that. I am, however, going to start doing commission work for props, which seems to be a newfound passion of mine. I'm still going to do the miniatures. Um, that handle that I just picked up, the black lines that you see, are all about where I will cut it to use the latter half, the part you actually hold, as the handle for the cleaver itself. It was my way of paying homage to its original function and its original use. Right here, I tried to remove I want to say it was 1/4 inch thick. No, it wasn't even that. It was a 1/8 thick steel that had been folded over, but quickly found I couldn't do that. So what I wound up doing is, on this part, I just started trying to figure out a way to jerry rig. I wanted to find a way to jerry rig it, but first I had to mark off the area I wanted to cut for the blade. And the reason I wanted to make an angled cut at about a 45-degree angle for this was this section of the blade I wanted to have a kind of stylized edge to it instead of just your regular rounded cleaver set. And that's not in any way to discourage you from doing so. But that was just a personal preference. I went ahead and I made my mark at 45 degrees, or as close to 45 degrees as I could find. That flat bar will be used for another purpose. And from there, I have to find a way to jerry rig the blade in place, since I do not have a grinder at this point in time. That is a new angle grinder that I recently acquired. The angle grinder, it was a gift, so that's the only reason I was able to get that. Yeah, as you can tell, my new workspace that I updated you all on, it's not that roomy, mostly because it's half of a shed and I have to kind of compile everything there. For those of you who are more experienced with grinders and working with metal and sparks in general, you're probably screaming at me for having sandals. And I agree with you. I was kind of short pressed for time because I needed to make sure I got this done, add it to a prop portfolio, upload something nice and new for you guys, and state that you guys need to protect your lungs when it comes to this. That's me realizing that I, didn't have close, but you need to protect your lungs, so a respirator mask is required in cases like this. You can probably get away with just a bandana over your mouth or something like that, but just go with the respirator mask. It might feel a little funky, and it might get a little humid in there, but it's worth it, for the amount of fine metal dust that you save. What I started doing here is I made a cut at either end of my mark, so that way I could make sure that my cuts lined up. In that way, when I got to certain points, I can just kind of chip it and work the scrap off in smaller segments than one piece, since I hadn't really figured out the best use for the grinder at that point. I was still fairly new to it. Turned out my jury rig was not entirely stable since it was pushing back, so I found an old cinder block, placed it up there to hold it in place. And I just went to town on the grinding. Like I said, I will be doing the miniature work. It's just a matter of time. Time and life getting in the way, which, as everybody knows, it most certainly does. So, I will do my best to upload a new miniature video sometime in the very near future, so keep an eye out for that. I also have a new game in general that I would like to share with you guys. The game itself is it's not particularly smiled upon in America since it was discontinued. However, it is still continued in Japan as far as I'm aware, and it's a pretty fun game. Right here you'll see that I did my angled cut, and I was able to get the cut down off the back end to make the artificial tang I was talking about. You can kind of see it taking shape for the cleaver set. The tang itself is pretty long as far as my hands go, and I have fairly small to barely medium hands, and there was plenty of room for me to grip it and still have a little bit left, which is useful. My angle grinder did get a little haywire, which is why you'll see some stray marks on it. Like I said, I filed down the teeth to make that easier in the long run. There are a couple of burrs that I'm feeling on it, and right here I'm discussing how I wanted to do my bevel, I think it was. But right now we're going to focus on the handle, which I tried to do in two ways. First way I tried to do it was I just tried to drill a hole and then two smaller holes on either side and kind of work them with a file into each other. But the other way, which didn't really work, was taking the tang, superheating it to red hot status, and plunging it through the handle so it'll make a snug fit. And that wasn't really working, and it wound up just making a bigger mess for me to file out. But filing it out had its own difficulties, and we'll get to that in a minute. The vise that you're seeing is also a gift. This was gifted to me by a friend who wanted to help me move along since they knew I needed to keep busy, and I was trying to find ways to keep you guys happy and hopefully make a little bit of money with prop work. And with this adding to my prop portfolio, you know, it's just one more step in the right direction. Right now, this would be day 2 of this build. I had to break it up since my current location, anything past 6 o'clock, you can't do work on it. It's just I don't have any lighting in the shed. I don't have the electricity directly connected to it to do so. But we're going to go ahead and we're going to get this in the vise and do the filing I was talking about. Hopefully finish it up. The drill I was using, unfortunately, was not long enough to go through either all the way through one side, so I kind of had to guess and aim on the other side of the handle to make the hole. Right now it has a lot of bite to it to hold in the sawtooth file I think I was using to really hold it in there. But after a little work, it did start to file out properly, and that did make it a little bit easier. This is later on that same day, and I have, at this point, very bad news for you all. The handle, if you can see it there down by the vise, it broke into 4 separate pieces. The first piece was kind of small, and I figured I could work around that with an epoxy type glue. So here you go, all of the pieces. But they were rather clean breaks. I mean, they were almost cut breaks, and that to me meant that it had been made out of smaller segments, and when the segments didn't work, it kind of snapped. And the reason they snapped is I was gently hammering the handle onto the tang, and it was a snug fit. It was not overly snug. It was not too loose. It was pretty fair, and it broke. The first piece fell off. I was able to live with that, and because like I said, I was going to use epoxy. The second piece fell off. I was starting to get concerned, so I tried to take it out. I tried to take it off, see if I could fix it. And as I was trying to remove it, the third and fourth pieces fell off. And I have to go back and redo it, hopefully with a different piece of wood, and not repeat the same result, which unfortunately means a lot of time spent on filing out a new handle. Not a whole lot I can do about that. Right now, I was just trying to figure out my next step since I didn't have any wood directly near me. All right, here I believe it is. Nope, this is day 3. I went out and I found a piece of wood, filed it off, and yes, I know this handle is blocky, but it didn't really matter since it started to get a large crack down the top and the bottom of where it was centered, which unfortunately means that one wasn't going to work out either, and so I had to remove it before it cracked and destroyed itself completely. I'm probably going to wind up using that as firewood. So what I did wind up doing is I was given some epoxy putty. The kind of epoxy putty I was given hardens a lot like steel. The label said that it was a steel fabric of some kind or something like that. It had steel fibers in it to increase its strength and durability. So I had set it maybe 2 minutes after starting the bonding process, and it was already strong enough to handle and mess with. It did get incredibly hot, as you would expect from an epoxy putty, but it was very, very sturdy really fast. At this point, I'm gonna need to round the handle, and to do that, I'm going to be using the new new bench grinder that I was also gifted. Thankfully for me, I have friends and family who were seeing that I was trying to do something productive, and they helped me out. They got me that nice bench grinder, the angle grinder, and the vise, and I thank them wholeheartedly for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the handle, I'm going to run it through the bench grinder, kind of round everything out, make it nice and sturdy, and then put a bevel on that edge. And when I put a bevel on that edge, I'll probably have it refined and honed, since its thickness is good for a sharpening machine that I currently own. And there are a couple of rounded areas where it should be a flat line, and I'm going to run it through that as well, see if I can straighten those out a little. Made my bevel, made the rounding of the epoxy putty. As I went down and did the bevel, I started thinking of something else I could do with the cleaver itself. And I blame most of this on a friend of mine who was talking to me about Bloodborne and Jack the Ripper in the same set. So I decided that the front half of the blade would have saw teeth, large saw teeth, instead of, say, just a standard cleave. So after several hours of trying to figure out how to do large saw teeth and looking up people who made small saw teeth, I was able to figure out how to do the large ones. And that one actually helped out a lot. As you can see, there's been a rush treatment on this side of the blade, and that was to help me find my marks. And also, I was kind of getting impatient looking at that rust. But after the one half getting treated, I realized that I still have a lot more work to do, so it didn't really matter if I did the treatment before or after, so I was going to save it for after. I went back, did my saw teeth. The saw teeth was one tooth every inch. And the way I did it is I went straight down about maybe a quarter inch down, and those were straight lines down, and I would go back and curve the angle grinder down and up to try and get the kind of curved set that you're seeing. This was my first attempt at saw teeth, so it's not pretty, but it does do the job quite well. My only problem was that when I made the saw teeth with the angle grinder, it made burrs. When I made the burrs, I wound up having to go back to the bench grinder to fix them. And when I went back to the bench grinder, it kind of took away the curve itself, and so it was a back and forth battle to get the bevel back and get the teeth back to their rounded point. And it eventually became successful. I believe this was day 4 of this build, and the teeth have their bevel, they have their point, the burr is gone. My only problem is that one tooth on the end, but with a light cut on just a little bit of light pressure did grip rather well at the teeth point. It did cut pretty easily, and the tooth on the end actually had its uses, since it allowed that little bit to just slide right out if you were to cut into something. Like I said, it's a bit of a pain to make sure the teeth were stable. You can see that one of the teeth actually wound up being rounded out, so I had to go back and fix that. But the problem I have with the bench grinder is that when I go to take care of the teeth, well, I'll wait for myself to stop fiddling with the edge to show you that. Like I said, rush treatment on one side and no rush treatment on the other. Figured I could do it later, and I was right. I can do it later. It didn't really hurt or harm the process. The angle grinder did again kind of get carried away from me and made a couple marks, but it's alright. That tends to happen. The bench grinder, like I was saying, when it came to taking care of the teeth, it would catch in the space and then just slam the teeth right down. When I went to look at it, it turned out that a lot of the settings on the bench grinder had been loosened and moved, which only added to the problem and didn't make the job any easier. So I had to go back and I had to fix those right there. So once I fixed those, I had to do a lot of awkward and mainly uncomfortable positions to fix the teeth, get the curve and the point back. And after that, it was just another rush treatment and it was done. Like I said, just have to go back and fix out some of those rounded teeth, take care of the edge, make sure it's nice and proper now that the settings are back, and it would take care of itself from that point. The card game I was mentioning earlier, it's a fun card game, but like I said, it's been discontinued in America. It should still be active in Japan, and it's based on a rather popular series in both the States and Japan itself. It's kind of part of their trademark franchises, if you can understand what that means. So, for those of you who don't know what it means, giant fighting robots. So yes, it is a mech-based anime that is also a mech-based card game. And that's not to say that this card game is derived from a anime where they use cards to represent mechs. No, it's not that. This has already been a pre-established franchise that it wound up being based off of. And I will upload a video of that with me and my friend Robert playing the game, as well as another miniature. I did take another trip to the grinder with the handle. Some of the parts were still flatter than I preferred, so I had to kind of work with that. And there you have it. I wound up doing a linen wrap, just taking an old t-shirt and soaking it in teas to darken it up, look like a bandage, and wrapped it around using hot glue to hold it in place. It came out looking rather nice. Both sides are not clean. It does have some pitting, but the pitting only adds character, in my opinion. I decided to name the blade Jacqueline The Ripper to play off of and to pay homage to Jack the Ripper himself. It was an interesting prop. It was a fun prop, and I will upload a cutting test on it. So right about now, I've got to go and work on the cutting test video. If you liked the video, hit the like button down below. Subscribe for more. Share these videos, and I will upload more in the future. This is not my only prop. I will be making more, along with my other videos once every month, hopefully to do more. Thank you, and see you next time.